Hi, welcome to Judy's Losing It. I'm Judy, and let's talk about weight. I've been watching a lot of old videos, and particularly of obviously weight loss surgery, but Grace gets gastric. I've been watching time frames from when she was doing her videos and me. So right now I'm like, I don't know, 11, 12 weeks out, something like that. And one of the videos that she made was talking about her journey in life and where she thought she was going to be comfortable ending up after this push to lose weight from the surgery. So it inspired me. It really did. And last night on my Fitness Pal, I had my weight journey. And for, I think it was from 2016 and to the current date of 2019. And then on little Post-it notes, I had written down my weight going back to 2011. So I had all of these different things, but not really one picture. So I decided to make an Excel spreadsheet. And so that's what I did. I entered all of my various weights. And it's really made me think about where and how I find myself here, September 14th, 2019, 2.5 months out from my VSG surgery, and where I started. So I mean, when I was born, I think it was 8 pounds something or other. So I was a bigger baby, but I wasn't huge by any means. My mother, who was born in 1923, she weighed 12 or 13 pounds. So obviously my grandmother had gestational diabetes, but of course in those days I didn't even know what it was all about. So then I was a chubby kid. I think I've shared before, but my mother, who was a very large woman, her weight ranged up into the 400s, but she was 5'11". She was just a big woman, whereas I'm 5'4". And so for her carrying all that weight, it was probably equal to me in the 350s. So she was horrified at the thought that her daughter would be fat like her. And so when I was 7 in second grade, she put me on a diet. And it's from there, I definitely feel that binge eating became an issue for me, because I can remember being in school and everybody else was getting an ice cream on a Friday. It was just a treat. And I didn't get one. So I would steal food at the house. I would try and, I'd steal my dad's cookies in the cookie jar and take them down so far, but only so far, so that Mom wouldn't notice. And, and then I would go and eat it in secret and in private, which has basically been how my binge eating has been, throughout my life. I don't know what weight I was at age 7, but I do know that by age 9, I weighed somewhere around 199 pounds, nearly 200. So from age 7, it just kind of began that yo-yo thing for me. By 6th grade, I had to have been around 229 pounds. And the reason I know that is because Mom was part of TOPS, which was Take Off Pounds Sensibly. And so she, as a preteen, got me involved with that. And I actually won the national award when I was like 13, because I lost the most weight of any, I guess, teenager, preteen teenager, something like that, in the US. And so my mom and I fundraised and got to go back to Washington, D.C., which was very exciting. But I had lost something like, and I don't remember the exact amount, but something like 64 pounds. And so adding that all together, I had to have weighed close to 230 to have lost down to 165 pounds. 165 pounds is the lowest weight that I know of that I've ever been since I was 9 years old in 4th grade. So I started junior high at 165, and I don't really recall how well that went. I know in high school I was bouncing between 180 and 200. I tried Weight Watchers in high school. My mom was periodically putting me on a diet. You know, it's not necessarily a diet that we would consider today, but, you know, while she was alive, she definitely curbed my eating. And she was more than willing to make 2 different meals to make sure that I got a lower calorie meal. So, you know, thanks, Mom. Really. I know she did it out of love. Kind of makes me cry a little bit, sorry. Because she died when I turned 21. Excuse me. But weight does this to us. It's an emotional thing. So I know in college I was probably somewhere around, you know, I probably gained that, for me it was 20 pounds to 220. I can remember going in and seeing a nurse probably when I was 20 for like a checkup. And she was like, yes, you've got to lose weight, you know. And, you know, I think in hindsight, just say, hey, don't gain any more weight. Just maintain this. I think that would have been a much better thing to do. But as we know, healthcare professionals are looking at BMIs and weight exclusively. It's a rare one to find who looks more at the overall. Because, I mean, I was a healthy person at that age, at 20. You know, I was walking, I was, you know, there was really nothing, you know, wrong with my health. And then after my mom died, things got very rough. And I truly just started eating. It was the only way I knew to deal with it. I ended up not finishing college. I ended up just going to fast food and going and sitting in the car and eating. I would go to her, I would go to her gravesite, and that didn't do any good. I would go to parks and just sit there, and then I would just drive. I was in Southern California, and you know, in the back of my mind, I just thought I could leave my grief behind, and I wasn't able to. So at that point, I definitely began gaining a lot of weight, and it became very out of control, and I didn't care. In my, I don't know, mid-20s, something like that, I read Fat is a Feminist Issue. And while I still agree with some of it to this day, I don't agree with all of it. I think that obesity has a price to pay, and we have to, you know, there's just certain aspects that, you know, you have to deal with, you know. I mean, I remember because I moved from Southern California to Bellingham, Washington in 1980. And I was 21, 22. And I was kind of like, oh, you know, just doing my thing. And then I needed to see a doctor, I think for acne of all things. Because after my mom died, I had terrible acne. And this was somebody who had no acne, hardly at all. And so I went to a doctor, and he wanted to weigh me, and I just kind of refused. And so I really don't have a good idea of my weight in my 20s or my 30s, because I really wasn't paying attention. I know I was fluctuating. I would, you know, I was doing yoga in my late 20s, and suddenly I lost some weight, gained it back. You know, that whole yo-yo thing, but less of the yo-yo thing, particularly in my 30s. I just struggled against the idea of dieting, is what I'm trying to say. I wasn't struggling with my weight. I was fine with my weight. You know, I've been writing a little memoir, and it's sad to say, but a part of me was eating because I was missing my mom, and I thought that she would come back. And, you know, I'm like, I'm showing you and waiting for her to come back, and like, no, you don't, miss. And that didn't happen. And my health now is suffering for that. My mother in, you know, I'm not quite sure the year, but I think probably mid 60s, probably between 64 to 67, somewhere in that range. She had weight loss surgery. And weight loss surgery in that era is not what it means today. Basically, they rearranged her intestines. They cut her open from one hip to the other. She lost her belly button, and they rehooked up her intestines so that food, I mean, it's more of a DS except extreme. Food would just go through her very quickly. So she had constant diarrhea, but she lost a tremendous amount of weight. She lost down to probably 200, 220, somewhere in there. And she looked thin because she was tall. She was big boned. And so, you know, she was very happy with that result. I know it cost my family about $10,000. My dad had gotten an inheritance from an uncle, and they decided to spend it on that. And both of them thought it was the best thing they ever did. And but I'm sorry, but this is going to be really long. But ultimately, so she had that in like her mid 40s. And by the time she was early 50s, she ended up with uterine cancer. And so when I was 15 and my brother was 13. And because she had a young family, the decision was made after her hysterectomy to give her radiation. And this is the mid 70s. As we all know, medicine has improved, but unfortunately it turned out to be a major issue for her having the radiation, because they burned part of her intestines. So over the next 2 years, as a woman in her 50s, you are not listened to, and particularly back in the 70s. Oh, you're just going through menopause. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're this. It took going through so many doctors to finally say, oh, you've got a problem. You're starving to death. Because the radiation, by damaging her intestines, nothing was sticking to her. And literally she got down to skin and bones. She weighed 160 pounds. And I can remember her laying in bed and seeing her pelvis. You could just see the outline of her pelvis through her nightgown. And I mean, it was the size of a small cow. So I mean, she was literally skin and bones, and whatever intestines, you know, or organs she had inside of her. That was about all she had. So she went from there, and then she went, and they had to do a revision and rehook her back up because of this, which she really fought against. But they went back to the surgeon in Seattle who'd done the surgery to begin with, who told her, no, you have to have this redone, rehooked up. And so overnight, because with her surgery, there was never any, she ate whatever she wanted. She could have half a pie. She could have, you know, 2 helpings. There was absolutely no control that she ever had over her food intake. So that when she got hooked up again, overnight, it was like she gained 250 pounds. All of a sudden, she was 400 again. And which led to a bathroom accident. She was, why the heck she was taking a bath, I have no idea, but that's how she preferred. And instead of taking a shower, which we had a shower, she fell and crushed her kneecap with her weight. And basically, you know, about 6 weeks later, she ended up dying of a blood clot to her heart. So at the age of 56, she was gone. And so going back to my story, I remember in my 30s, this woman who had a daughter who was overweight, who'd come into the print shop. I'm co-owner of a print shop. I wasn't at the time, but and she mentioned that her daughter had her stomach stapled, and when she said that, I didn't even think that was possible because her daughter was this beautiful, petite woman. And you know, they were encouraging me because being in Bellingham, I'm close to the Canadian border, and for the most part, the majority of the time I've been here, the Canadian dollar is much less than the US dollar. So theoretically, your money goes a lot farther in Canada than it does in the US. But I say that caveat because usually things are just a lot more expensive up there. And at the time, at the time where it would have been actually a pretty good idea in my, you know, mid-late 30s to have had it, I said no. Killed my mom. There's no way in hell I'm doing that. I was adamant. I was adamant for years and years and years. In my 40s, once again, we don't have any history to say what I weighed. But I can remember going to the doctor's office and finally stepping on the scale. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly what the weight was, but it was like 325. And everybody was so happy because actually I'd lost weight. And in my mind, I'm like, why is everybody happy that I weigh 325? This is horrible. But, you know, I had lost weight enough to actually register on the scale. Because for a part of my life, even getting on the scale didn't go up to 400. It only went to 350. So yeah, there was that. So then we come to, in my 40s, my brother, whom I live with, we share a house and a business and various things. So he had gotten diagnosed with diabetes. Why him and not me? I have no idea. Outside of the fact, I had an exercise bike that I had gotten in my 20s and that I periodically rode. You know, unless, I mean, maybe exercise, I just don't know. But anyways, when he got diagnosed, we changed how we ate here at the house. And I got down to somewhere in the 270s, which was a good weight for me. I was actually able to hike, you know, like 7 to 12 miles in a day. It wasn't any good the next day, and my knees were killing me for the week. I would be icing them for the week, but then I'd be ready the next weekend to go do it again. So I got into a little backpacking. It was a sweet time in my life. I wasn't super fit by any means, but I was strong enough to go do some of the things that gave me great pleasure. But then I gained back, of course. And so by the time I was in my late 40s, probably about 48, 49, I started paying attention to the lap band. Now, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't go ahead and get the lap band, but it was something I was really wanting. However, finances wasn't going to allow it. My brother and I had bought a building for the business, and everything went into that. So there was nothing left over. So I knew what I needed, but I wasn't able to get it taken care of. And then I hit my 50s. I remember my 50th birthday. I wanted a party, and I had a party at the park, and we had to haul all the food down and to the park from the parking lot. And after the first trip, I was drenched in sweat and I was out of breath. And I knew I had to do something. So that was in August of 2008. And I said, okay, I've got to do something. So I joined Weight Watchers. I've moved, not the house, but we moved the shop, which this is my office, into the house. And up until this move, I had my Weight Watchers books from there. I don't have it anymore. So I'm just kind of guesstimating what I was. So I think it was by October of 2008, I was at Weight Watchers. And I weighed right around 350 pounds. Over time, through Weight Watchers, I got down to about 270. I lost around 75 pounds with Weight Watchers, 75, 80 pounds. And I did really well. And all of a sudden, money became tight. I wasn't able to afford it easily after a couple of years. And I mean, and it is the thing with larger people. You can't get to goal quickly enough. And so it costs us a lot more money to be Weight Watcher people than it does for a smaller person who can get to a maintenance weight and then get on maintenance, which is a lot cheaper. But I did pretty well. I did pretty well until 2011, when my father died. And while that was, my grief journey was much easier than it was for my mother, I started eating a little bit more again, to the point where I decided to go on a juice fast. And this was the end of July 2012. I started at 330 pounds, and October 20th of 2012, I got down to my lowest registered weight ever of 259.2 pounds. I stayed there like a half a minute. And then by March of the next year, I was back up to 330. that was the first time I'd ever gone on a quick loss, because with Weight Watchers I had lost slow and I gained fairly slow, so my clothes still all fit. But with that juice fast, when I lost it so fast, it took a lot. I put on all this fat, which meant I didn't fit in my old clothes. So that was a big problem for me. And so I was in a body that was so out of shape and couldn't do much of anything, and had very limited wardrobe. I tried to go back juicing because it was very successful. If I had perhaps been able to stay on a vegan diet, I might have done better, but I just wasn't able to keep that weight lost. And so luckily my brother heard about the fact that finally in the state of Washington at the end of 2015 that insurance companies had to do weight loss surgery for its insured people. So in 2015, I started trying to qualify to get on the weight loss track. And so they had, as well as my BMI, I also had to have a specific comorbidity. They only accepted a couple. And so my bad knees qualified me. I was down at UW and they took a look at my x-rays and was like, wow, you're still walking. Which now I understand, but this is quite a few years later too. So it took me a while to get on the program, and when I finally did, I had a high weight of 370, which was January of 2016. It took me a while. The stress and pressure that I felt over this 6-month journey was tremendous. It really wasn't until the last couple of months that I seriously was able to get weight off, and I did get down to 334, which was quite good. But as you know, instead of being accepted for surgery, I got denied surgery at that point because the guy who did my psych eval failed me. And still pissed. I was so ready for surgery at that point. I was so ready. I haven't been that ready since, which is really sad to say. And I haven't. But that point in 2016, I was ready. And ultimately it took another year to get denied surgery. And at that point, I was 358.6. I mean, part of the problem was my weight. There's no doubt about it. Part of the problem. But also, they were denying me because of the time frame. And when you have nobody from Molina there to explain or stand up for you, yeah. So that was 7/17. I got denied. And then in October, and don't get me wrong, I was eating everything after that. I was not a happy camper, and the only thing I could do was eat. But I was starting in October. I was starting to get feeling better. You know, I was walking more. I was kind of on my road, and then kind of like my mom, I fell and crushed my arm. I crushed, I had to have surgery right here, and I had to put in pins and a plate to put my wrist, lower arm back together again, which put things off quite a ways. And then in early 2018, I noticed that I was having spotting. So due to my weight, I never had really serious gynecological visits. So anyways, I had to go see a gynecologist who had to have a surgical procedure to even get into my cervix to do a scraping. And when she did, it came back precancerous. So I was sent down to Seattle and had to have a hysterectomy. I went in thinking, no, I don't want a hysterectomy. But it's what I had. And at that point, on my scale, now this is my scale, I was 385. And that's the highest that I've ever known. Granted, in the doctor's office, it was 390 something, but I do not count that. My scale, 385. So, all of these things put off. My brother and I we had to sell a rental house that we'd bought for my dad and his wife. And we tried, after my dad died, my stepmom moved in with her son. And so we'd been renting it out a few years, and finances were such, we needed the money. So we sold it. But we also had some savings left. And as my part of the savings, I wanted to go to Mexico and have weight loss surgery. So I knew I wanted to do that since 2018. But I had to wait for a propitious moment. I was hoping to have it done in February. That didn't work out. And then now I had it in July of this year, 2019. I started the pre-op. I had 5-week pre-op diet, which was, I think it was the end of May, and I weighed 355. So I'm very proud of that 30 pounds that I lost between my hysterectomy and the start of my pre-op. I consider that part of my freaking journey. I lost 21 pounds on the pre-op diet, and so I weighed the Monday that I flew out, and I was 334. And so I'm taking that weight since everything's based on my scale. And so that was the day before surgery on 7/1/2019. And as of today, I am 296.6, which means that since surgery, I've lost 37.4 pounds. And my, from the pre-op and everything, that puts it at 59.4, and total lost 88.4, which brings me now to where my goal is. Obviously, the next big thing for me is to be 285. That means I will have lost 100 pounds since my all-time high, which will be awesome. And that's my really big next goal. But then watching Grace Gets Gastric, it made me also wonder where I'm going to be, where I want to be down the road. I mean, I don't think that being 150, which would put me at normal BMI, is really where I'm going to be at the age of 61. I just don't see it. My real goal would be to be around 225. That would put me about at my college weight. I mean, I know I'm going to be carrying a lot of extra skin, So, you know, theoretically being 225, I would think I would easily be, you know, 210, 200, 210, something like that. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think that would be an excellent goal. Granted, it would still keep me in the obese. I was working it out, and my BMI would be 37.4 at 225. But the one thing is, I know going into my old age is I'm going to have knee replacement surgery. And I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be low enough for me to qualify. My primary care physician, when I mentioned it to her, she felt that, you know, since I would be saying to them I've lost over 150 pounds, that should qualify me. I just don't know if that'll be the case or not. But it seems reasonable to me. In reality, if I could lose down to 234, I would be happy there too. You know, somewhere between 150, 160 pounds lost seems like an excellent goal that hopefully I can maintain. So anyways, I've just been doing a lot of thinking and soul searching, history and everything, and I thought I'd just put these thoughts up on the internet. I mean, at 36 minutes, I can't imagine anybody's gonna actually watch this whole thing. But at least for me, this is where I am. I am not where I want to be. I'm a lot better than where I was, and the future seems pretty bright. So anyways, thanks for sticking with me, and I will be back soon. Bye.